Ninjago Crystallized had the massive task of serving as a satisfying conclusion to all of Ninjago, which it failed at, and there's one scene in particular which just ruined almost 10 years of Ninjago in my eyes. That, of course, being the final battle, and I got a lot to say, so I'm just gonna get on with it. First up, Harumi. Oh, Harumi, there are so many problems with Harumi this season, but I'm just gonna try to stick to the things that she did in the battle. Now, the first red flag for Harumi was when the writers couldn't decide whether to make her love Lloyd or hate him, and I mean, why? It shouldn't even be a question. She emotionally manipulated Lloyd to torture him for the death of her parents, and her whole plan to revive Lord Garmadon was to hurt Lloyd for failing to protect her family. There was never anything between them, even as she says. Harumi was originally motivated just by revenge, which was what made her so interesting in Sons of Garmadon, but now she has a new motivation, as the Overlord helped her realize during their conversation, which goes a little something like this. Oh hey Harumi, join me in my evil plans. No way, how do I know you won't just corrupt everyone in your image and consume Ninjago in darkness? Oh well, that was kind of my whole plan. But at the very least, if there's no one left to fight, then there'll be no fighting, right? And there'll be peace in the darkness? I'm sold. I'm just gonna ignore how stupid this is and move on. Harumi basically spends the first half of the fight telling Lloyd he isn't strong enough and the only way to achieve peace is to turn everyone into mind-controlled crystal zombies. But then the Overlord drops the bombshell. He corrupted the Great Devourer and made her evil, and suddenly Harumi is a good guy now because it was the Overlord that technically killed her parents. Like most things, this technically doesn't make any sense. I mean, if that's the case, why isn't she mad at Pythor? He's the one who released the Great Devourer. Her whole point was that the ninja were weak and couldn't protect her family, and that's still true. Anyway, apparently this magically fixes everything, and Harumi ends up helping the heroes defeat the Overlord, but in this scene, her drastic turn from being bad to good, based on the most pointless of reasons, just ruins her character for me. My thoughts on Harumi: she should have stayed dead. I don't know why they brought her back. Actually, I do, but we'll get into that later. Oh boy, if you thought Harumi was inconsistent, wait till you see Lloyd. Just like Harumi, Lloyd is conflicted about his feelings on Harumi. At least in this case, it kind of makes sense. What doesn't make sense, at least to me, is that he spends like half of the fight trying to convince Harumi to be good and help them defeat the Overlord. I'm not sure if Lloyd thinks of Harumi like that. I mean, he does have feelings, but it's more like a guilty thing because he knows that Harumi is kind of irredeemable and he shouldn't have feelings for her. So I don't know why he's trying to suddenly redeem her, but I'm just gonna let that slide because we got bigger problems to deal with. And of course, I'm talking about Oni Lloyd. Not gonna lie, Oni Lloyd was kind of a great idea, and it even ties back to his character arc from the Oni trilogy. Lloyd is still naive and wants to do things the right way, even though Garmadon keeps reminding them that he will have to deal with the Oni part of him. Lloyd slowly realizing that there isn't a definitive right thing to do could have made for a very interesting character arc. But instead, after the Overlord kills Garmadon, Lloyd enters Oni form, gets scared of his reflection, turns back and gets his butt kicked. Now, surprisingly, I'm still okay with this. I find that this direction could have been fine as long as, while Lloyd is dangling from the edge, he realizes that despite what he wants, the Oni form is the only way to defeat the Overlord, and despite his personal feelings for the collective good, he enters Oni form and defeats the Overlord. But no, he just stays there hanging while the Overlord prepares to destroy Ninjago. That's just not Lloyd to me. Lloyd will be willing to do anything to save his friends, but now he decides to change at like the worst possible time. That's my fundamental problem with Lloyd throughout this season. He just does things that Lloyd would never do, and that's especially true in this scene. He gives Harumi multiple chances, but isn't willing to trust Garmadon, who literally hasn't done a single thing wrong this season. This is so frustrating to me because I loved Lloyd, and I'm so grateful Dragon's Rising restored his character to where it was before. Garmadon was easily my favorite part of Crystallized, but even he wasn't spared in this scene. Oh my god, he might have just had the worst fake-out death in Ninjago history. His death should have been a turning point for Lloyd, finally realizing that he can't keep an overly naive view of the world. But after the whole Oni form thing was scrapped, it's revealed that Lord Garmadon actually wasn't dead and he was just faking this whole time to help Lloyd unlock Oni form. What? I mean, if that was the plan going all along, why did they even go with this? Like, why did they have to have this pointless fake out death? What does it achieve? In reality, this was probably just done because they didn't know what to do with Garmadon in the second half of the battle. But, I mean, they could have come up with anything else. Honestly, I feel like this just ruins the story a little bit because it kind of paints Garmadon as the bad guy for wanting Lloyd to do Oni form, even though he was completely correct about the Oni form. Now, personally, to me, this just represents a bigger problem with Crystallized, with the writers just wanting to end off everything on a happy note. And while that isn't a bad idea, in this case, it just feels a little bit unsatisfying because Garmadon's death was a huge emotional moment and they just undercut that and now they're like playing it as a joke. I don't know, I just didn't like this very much. Before we get on to the final point, I'm just gonna go on a quick side tangent with Nia. Nia's whole premise from the beginning was that she was an independent woman, and even though she didn't have any golden weapons, she was able to build a life for herself using her Samurai X suit. However, in this battle, she's shown to be completely incompetent, and even in her moment, the best she could do is slightly bend a pipe, and then she has to be saved by Jay, and then Okino. Okino, the most random side character from the most forgettable season of Ninjago in my opinion. I just don't know what to say. That concludes my quick rant about Nia. Now that we're done with how this battle kind of ruined a bunch of characters, I want to talk about the battle itself. This is a pretty good battle visually, which is something I can say for most like Wild Brain battles, and I will give them credit where credit is due, but that's about the only good thing I have to say. If I were to describe this battle in one word, it would be soulless. I genuinely did not feel any emotion during this battle at all, except my rage at how they're completely butchering half the characters. Take for example, Master of the Mountain. The final battle was a great fight, but had so much emotion, with Cole finally living up to the promise that he made to his mom, or even Dragon's Rising Season 1, where Sora finally realizes that she doesn't have to prove herself to her parents, or even something like Sons of Garmadon, the battle between Lloyd and Garmadon, where Lloyd realizes that his father is no longer the man that he knew. What made those fights so great was the emotion that went into them, and this battle just doesn't have any emotion at all. It's just generic four-headed dragon fighting generic bad guy. I think that this is a general problem with Crystallized as a whole. It just seems like a big cash grab for LEGO. They market it as the final season of Ninjago. There was obvious Ninjago is continuing, and they just wanted to cram as much nostalgia bait and fight scenes as possible. Quick, put a generic golden dragon. There was a golden dragon last time, I'm pretty sure. Oh, and give it 4 heads. Also, make the Overlord assume the form of a giant black-purple creature with wings. Realistically, that's also why they decided to bring back all of the old villains like Harumi, even though they totally shouldn't have. Also, is it just me? But doesn't it feel like the ninja won this battle a little bit too easily? Typically when the ninja win, it's because of some sacrifice or new ability that the ninja learned. Here it's none of those things. Honestly, it feels like the ninja won this battle more because of luck than anything else. They luckily happened to stumble upon dragon form, then luckily put the weapons together, which luckily released a 4-headed golden dragon, which luckily defeated the Overlord. The indestructible Vengestone army suddenly became very destructible, easily destroyed by baseball bats, guitars, and newspapers. Seriously, Tommy Andreessen? The Overlord was also undefeatable until he was easily defeated in like under 2 minutes. Just watching this scene made me feel so unsatisfied personally, because all of the plot points that they had built up throughout the season were disregarded for random stuff that they made up last minute. If this was any other season, I would be okay with it, but this is the finale to all of Ninjago, and it doesn't satisfyingly conclude any of the character arcs that had been going on throughout this season. In general, the combination of bad character work, cheap nostalgia bait, and bloated soulless fighting just makes this scene one of the worst scenes in Ninjago history, and by far the worst final battle that we've ever gotten. And I know that this did ruin Ninjago for a lot of people, but that's just what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comments below and subscribe.